Hey guys, Kakarot197 again. This time with a review of the high-grade Pharact from the Witch from Mercury series, provided to me by my favorite online hobby store, Hobbling Japan. Links to get your own down below. And there are a lot of reasons as to why you'd want to do that right now. And the reason that should be immediately obvious is that this thing just looks plain awesome. The color scheme is menacing, the proportions are just perfect, and just as with every Witch from Mercury kit, they add just that little bit of extra detail without going overboard. And the engineering to bring you this beautiful mobile suit is equally impressive. What really surprised me here is the attention to detail in the face. The only two things I did here are panel lining and removing the safety flags from the V-fin. So the color separation really is as awesome as you can see on screen right now. The eyes are molded in color, and even the tiny Vulcan guns do come in the correct red color as well. I still remember when this was a novel feature for master grades. But you will have to do some painting to get it 100% accurate. For the inside of the head sensor, you'll need either gray or black, depending on which version you go with, and for the V-fin, you will need some white for the outer tips, but that is completely understandable. For the rest of the body then, you just need some black for highlighting small details, the insides of the thrusters, and a bit for the gun bits. As for the stickers then, things are looking equally great. You get an optional sticker for the head to have the Gundam system not active, and then a bunch of red stickers for the other Gundam system things on the hips, the chest, and the backpack. Combine that with virtually no visible seam lines and almost no hollow parts, and you have a model kit that looks absolutely fantastic straight out of the box. The color scheme alone would have ensured this, but the engineering is equally up to snuff. So now let's turn to those equally awesome accessories. And we're starting off with the gun bits called Pharact units. Not because I want to start with them, but because unfortunately on my model kit, they just don't want to stay inside of those back boosters. And to think that before building this thing, I was actually worried about not being able to get them out. But there is actually a system in place for that. The little pegs on the inside aren't there to hold the bits in, but they actually serve as fulcrums. So by pushing one end, the bit comes right out. Or if you're unlucky like me, you can just shake it and at least some of them will come falling out. With just this set then, that is about the extent that you can do with them. You can separate them, but you'll need the Witch from Mercury display base set to show these bad boys in action. Next up on the mobile suit then, we have the beam sabers that are stored inside of the arms, which is a really cool mechanism that is wonderfully recreated on this model kit. They are a bit tricky to remove, but Bandai did include a small peg to make things easier. They of course come with two clear green beam saber blade effect parts, and they fit snugly into the hands if you push them down enough. And then we get to its giant beam rifle, or as they call it, the Beam Arquebus. Not exactly a term that I ever expected to see popping up together with a futuristic combat mech, but anyways, it fits perfectly in either the left or right hand, and also comes with an open left hand for sniping poses. But there is still one more thing to talk about: the feet. They're made to resemble a bird's beak and are therefore called beakfoot. However, the most important thing is that they have a beam cannon inside of them that is very effective during space combat. And now it is time to move on to the articulation, which is surprising in both good ways and bad ways. Starting off with the head, it is technically on a double ball joint, but as you might be able to tell, you're mainly going to get the movement out of the top ball joint because that bottom one isn't really doing anything at all. And this is not the case at all for the shoulders, which are on two very nice ball joints. We've got some nice upwards movement, downwards movement, forwards and backwards movement, and then the arms themselves can also go up. They'll rotate around below the shoulder, bend at the elbow on only a single joint, and then the hands are again on ball joints, will wiggle around, turn around, and do everything a ball joint does. And then we get some really nice forwards and backwards movement in the waist, because not only do we have two ball joints, but the bottom one is also on an extra hinge for even more movement. Then on those ball joints, they'll of course also give it some nice sideways movement and rotation. Then the legs, as you can already tell thanks to the design, they're going to be extremely articulated. They go forwards all the way, even without the need of any front skirt movement, but for good measure, it does move a little bit. And as you can tell by the back skirt, the backwards movement is going to be equally good if you move the legs out a bit, because the back skirt is a bit bigger, but you can easily maneuver the legs around them. And unlike the front skirt, this one does not move. And the outwards movement is a nice 90 degrees. Then they'll also rotate around, bend at the knee on only a single joint, which isn't something you see all that often, and I hope that it's not going to become a standard. But for the Pharact, as you can see with the special design, this is about as far as it would be able to go anyway, so I am willing to forgive it for the other amazing articulation that it has. And then we get to the feet and their amazing articulation. It is a bit on the unique side, but you can pull some really cool poses with it. The ankle armor is on its own little ball joint, the toe can go up and down, the entire front part can go side to side, the entire back part can also go side to side, and then we have two hinge joints on the inside, allowing the thing to close up and open up, but this one does only go out that far, so that it always ends up in the correct position to have it in its normal standing pose. And then the rear claw, or I guess the lower jaw of the beak, can go up and down. And the entire thing can also rotate around. And then last but definitely not least, we have the giant backpack with those back boosters. The main thruster is on a little ball joint, allowing it to move around all the way. We have a hinge joint here, a hinge joint there, rotation here, rotation there. We have some more hinges as well as rotation on the outward parts. And then finally we have an opening thruster compartment. So while you might struggle a little bit with the unique feet articulation, this thing is more than capable of pulling off all of the badass poses that you want it to take, even without an action base. It might not have the best articulation ever with the lack of a double elbow and even a double knee joint, but it does manage to make up for those. So as always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? Yes. The Pharact manages to be an extremely awesome package that stands out in a line that is already really strong. 1,900 yen is no small price to pay, if you can even find it for its retail price, that is, but you are getting a very imposing Gundam with a lot of style, cool gimmicks, and some sweet accessories. So for these size comparisons, first up, here it is next to the other two Gundams from Witch from Mercury, at least the ones that have gotten high grades so far. And you can definitely see a difference in the intimidation factor. You've got the menacing head and color scheme, in addition to the heavy shoulders that give this thing a very towering appearance. So next up then, here it is next to the two other very chunky machines from Witch from Mercury, the two Delonzas. And well, unlike what you might have expected, the Pharact manages to somehow tower over them as well. Because even though the Delonzas are bulky, the Pharact combines its bulk with a lean and tall main body. And finally, here it is next to the standard size Gym Custom, and the always bulky Zaku 3. And thanks to those chunky shoulders, the Pharact can even go toe-to-toe with the Zaku 3. It might lose out in the leg department, but the upper body chunk definitely goes to the Pharact. And that has been all for this review of this kinda bad guy Gundam, which was provided to me by Hobbling Japan. Links to get your own down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.